Hey everybody, John with Owl. I am sitting here in my office, and you may be asking yourself, why are we sitting in your office if we're going to do a sidestep install video? Well, we'll get outside to the van here in a moment, but I thought it was going to be a good idea to start with kind of the various tools that we're going to need for the installation, as well as walk you through the brackets and how they function. Sidestep install is not a terribly difficult thing to do. It is time consuming, so understand that if you do want to get it installed by like one of our Owl off-road centers, you can. But if you want to do it yourself, it's absolutely something you can tackle. It's just a matter of, it's going to take a little while. And that's because there are a number of things you have to bolt together. And we are going to be using some Rivnuts, which can be a little time consuming to put in. We have hydraulic Rivnut guns and air pneumatic Rivnut guns that make it go a lot faster. But since you're not going to be installing these all day, every day, you'll probably get by with this. Let's actually start with this gun. This is a Rivnut gun, and how a Rivnut works, I'm going to show you with this plate. So the way it works is, because we don't have access to the backside to put on a nut, you use something called a Rivnut. And the way a Rivnut works is you insert the Rivnut from the front side, and then by actuating this Rivnut gun, it pulls the backside forward and actually crimps the back on there. So you see how you've got that spot you can thread in, and it crimps on the back side. So what do you need to worry about with Rivnuts? Well, with Rivnuts, you want to make sure they're tight, because if you don't squish the back enough, they can spin, and obviously you can't thread a bolt into something that's spinning. So you want to make sure when you're doing the installation of these Rivnuts that you make them nice and tight. And then of course, you want to paint the inside of those holes. So when you're drilling those holes to install the Rivnuts, anytime you drill a hole in your van, whether it's for our stuff or someone else's, you're gonna want to paint it. The cool thing is, we're underneath the body of the vehicle, so you need to worry about your exterior paint job at all. You can just grab a rattle can or a spray paint. We love Rust-Oleum Rust Reformer. It just lays down and dries really quick. It's matte black, so it looks good, and that's what we use. So we have a link to this on our website. Why are we using this particular gun for this? Well, the reason we use this is because it's got a short throw, and it hangs off the bottom. So a lot of the Rivnut guns kind of look more like bolt cutters. They've got a big long extension, so you can get leverage to make it tighter and make it go a little faster. This one's going to take a little bit more time, but you're under a van with a bunch of stuff, suspension components, drive shafts, these kinds of things. You don't really have room to use one of the big ones. So this is what we recommend. This also comes with a 1/4 inch, I don't know what you'd call it, tip for the gun. This is what we're going to be using to install these side steps. So good thing to have around. You can just keep it around, but it does come with the 1/4 inch bit, and that's what we're going to be using to install those Rivnuts. So when you're installing those Rivnuts, you're going to want this drill bit. It is a, don't you love standard? 23/64. There you go. 23/64 is the size drill bit that you're going to want for these Rivnuts. And then for installing your brackets, when you want to drill through the pinch weld for the bottom of the bracket, it is going to be a 1/4 inch drill bit. So the two drill bits that you need are a 23/64 and a 1/4 inch drill bit. Good news is these are pretty standard sizes. So if you have a variety pack of drill bits, you should be good to go. With most things, if you over drill the size of the hole, it shouldn't matter. So for example, this 1/4 inch, if you don't have a 1/4 inch, but you have something a little bigger, that's fine. With Rivnuts, it is not okay to choose a larger size, because if you choose a larger size, you can't get that Rivnut to seat properly and to squish down. So you are going to want that 23/64 drill bit for those Rivnuts. This is not our tool. If you're uncomfortable using a Rivnut gun, then definitely reach out to us and we can get you set up with an install for these. Practice with this before you go straight at your van. Find a little piece of scrap metal, drill some holes in it, and practice crimping these down. The way this works is you're going to want to, I'm not the world's best with one of these things, but what you do is you thread, and again, consult the instructions of the Rivnut gun. I'm going to give you a quick high level. So the way this works, if I take this Rivnut off, and if you've seen this, feel free to fast forward if you used a Rivnut gun before. But as you pull here, see how it retracts that tongue or that bit that sticks out? So what's going to happen is if you have an actual riv nut on here, let's put this in this piece of metal. As you pull this, it's going to start to widen that riv nut because it's pulling from this far end. And so I tightened it a little bit. Now I release, and now I tighten this back thing again. And what that's going to do is screw it in more so that I can get another pull with the riv nut gun. It's a little bit hard to hold the plate and do it at the same time. But you can already see that that is starting to squish that riv nut. And so you just keep going. But right now you can see the plate still spins. So I have not squished that riv nut enough. So I'll do it again. And then we'll keep tightening. And this is where we talk about, this is not a hard installation, but it can be a little time consuming. So now we've gotten to the point where the riv nut is squished enough that we can unscrew this whole thing from it. And you won't be able to see the backside of the riv nut, so you just want to make sure that it's not spinning. So you want to kind of get a feel for how tight to make it. This is probably the most fiddly, which I say a lot in our installs, item that you're going to have to do. If you just keep crimping this over and over again, it's going to eventually strip the threads out. But I didn't go quite as far as the other one in this plate, but the important thing is it's not spinning, and that's really all that matters. So that's how you do the riv nut. Again, you can look to the instructions in the riv nut gun for how to use it properly, but don't be afraid of it. It's not terribly difficult. As far as the hardware, this comes from me screwing things up my entire life. This is a bag of extras. So to install the riv nuts is an A bracket bag. And you can see that there's 2 riv nuts in there with some bolts. We're gonna go ahead and include some extra riv nuts, whether you wanna practice with one of them or you screw something up. We'd rather you have this stuff, but the important thing is most of the stuff you're installing with this kit is fairly standard. You may not have seen riv nuts at your hardware store before, but they probably have them, and they certainly have 1/4 inch if they have riv nut sizes. So regardless, we include some extras there. That's what that extra bag is. Let's move on to the other tools that you're going to need for this installation. You've got the 2 drill bits, you've got the riv nut gun with the 1/4 inch tip. You're going to need a 7/16 wrench and a 9/16 wrench. You use 9/16 for almost everything that's Owl. So you're going to need these 2 wrenches. As far as Allens go, you're going to need a 7/32, a 3/16, and a 5/32. So those are going to be to tighten the various nuts and bolts throughout the kit. So I'm going to get into the bracket now. We have an A bracket bag and a B bracket bag. Now the way we decided to design the side steps was so that you could attach them. Let's say you have a Winnebago Revel. You don't have to take the brackets that exist off. So most of this tutorial or installation video will be for what we call a naked van, a DIY van, a van without a lot of stuff on it. Now, if you do have some tanks and so on it, tanks are not hard to drop most of the time. You're unplugging an inlet or an outlet hose and then undoing some bolts and the tank comes out. So don't be afraid if you want to drop your water tanks on your vehicle to install these. But let's go forward with the assumption that you're going to be installing these on a full DIY van you're making yourself or on a brand new Sprinter. But I bring this up because we did make this bracket so that this part, which is the B portion of the bracket, this big upper part here, we call our A portion, and then we call this the B portion. The B portion will bolt directly up to Revel owners' side steps. I go over a whole compatibility video. You can watch that later, but these will mount to that. So if you already have a Revel and you're installing these on a Revel, you can actually skip all of the riv nut A bracket installation because you've got them. You're going to jump straight to this, and arguably you wouldn't even really need a video because you're just going to swap out the ones that you have on your Winnebago for these and mount the steps to it. It's fairly straightforward. Assuming you're doing a DIY, we wanted to show you how this bracket goes together. So there's a number of parts to it. You can see here, just for ease of demonstration, you've got the riv nuts on here. That is how it's going to go into your van. So your van's going to come down like this, and it's got a pinch weld on the bottom. So this is actually going to slot in like this, lever up. You're going to be drilling from the middle of the van out towards the world, installing those riv nuts. And then here, this is going to rest on your pinch weld. And in here is your backing plate that comes loose. Let me pull that out. So this is your backing plate. It's slotted in case, just for ease of install, this is going to go inside the pinch weld. So this is going to slot up, rotate like this. You're going to drill your holes. This is going to go on the back side of it. You're going to put these, I think they're 5/16 smaller bolts through this way, and then put the nut on the back side there. For installing the Rivnuts, you're going to want to put a washer below that bolt before you thread the 1/4-inch bolts into the Rivnuts that you've installed in your fan. I think that about covers the stuff that we want to do at my desk. I know it's not terribly exciting to sit at my desk when you want to get to installing. So now we'll jump outside and we will start putting these on a van and show you how quickly it goes. Well, quickly because we're going to edit it, but for you, it'll be probably the better part of an afternoon. But when you're done, think how awesome your van is going to look. That's the important thing. All right, let's head outside. Hey everybody, I told you we'd make it outside. It's a little bit of an overcast day, but perfect day for an install because we got the tools, we got the side steps. You see everything's laid out behind me. I'm getting borderline professional here. Now, I still don't have a camera person, so you have to deal with me moving the camera around. Maybe I'll get somebody to do it. But we're going to install the first bracket. Here's how this is going to work. You've got, as I said when I was in my office, an A bracket. Looks like this. Nice, big and heavy and robust. And you're going to have an A bracket bag. So what we're going to do to start off, we got to measure. Where's my tape measure? Oh, I just had it. Now it disappeared. Well, I grab a tape measure. But let me show you this. I will take you off the stand. Right here where the front door ends, we're on the passenger side, by the way. You've got this little body seam right here. You're going to want to measure from there 15 inches. See where I've got this line marked right there? I don't know if you can see that. That is going to be the center of your bracket. So what I mean by the center is if you've got your A bracket here, you're going to line up this fin that sticks out with that line, right? So this fin right here is going to line up with that. This fin right here is going to line up with that when you put the bracket on. So the first one is going to be 15 inches back from that door seam, and then we're going to space all of the additional brackets off of that first bracket. And again, we're starting with the passenger side. It's got more brackets. One of the best things you can have for this installation, if you don't already have it, is a creeper. This is a Harbor Freight special. There's a lot of things I won't buy at Harbor Freight, anything you trust your life to, but a lot of things I will buy. Things like creepers, inexpensive. It's worth its weight in gold for doing stuff like this. All right, so again, we measured, I pre-measured, you're gonna measure live. That line is back at 15 inches from this front seam right there. When you drill this, because you've got this kind of textured undercoating, it's kind of like an orange peely kind of thing on the drill. This is actually a smaller drill bit than we're going to use. It doesn't really matter how much smaller. Smaller drill bits tend to walk less than big ones. So we're going to drill our pilot holes with the smaller drill bit, and then we're going to size them up to, of course I had it in front of me inside, 1/4-inch drill bit. Esteemed colleague, 1/4-inch? Yep. All right, esteemed colleague agrees. So I'm gonna set you down and I'm gonna start drilling this stuff. So the important thing here is to put positive pressure on this bracket in the upward direction so you get it as tight to the top of that pinch weld as possible. I've got a special little pen here, but any thin pen, Sharpie will do. I'm pushing this up, it's lined up properly. I'm gonna drill, or excuse me, I'm gonna mark my holes here. And I'm actually going to install this bracket's pinch weld bolts first so that we can then mark the top holes where we're going to put the Rivnuts second. But this is going to hold it in exactly the right spot. So now we get to drill. And when you're drilling this, you want to just try to make sure you don't walk that bit around. So I'm going to get off my creeper, my favorite tool here. See if we can get you guys a little closer here. If you haven't drilled on your van before, it's a little bit of a scary proposition, but once you've done a couple of holes, you really don't care. It's easier than you think. All right, so now I'm gonna move up to my next size drill bit. And this is now the 1/4-inch drill bit. Now we've kind of got our pilot holes drilled. And this should go pretty quick. So this is the 5/16.
Quarter 20.
I'm sorry. This is a 1/4 bolt, and we just want to test that it fits through there. So that's a little tight, but it gets in there. Perfect. So those fit. So now what you want to do, once you've test fit those and it works, is actually mount the bracket. Now, don't forget, we are going to paint these, but because we're going to stick bolts through them right now, we're not going to paint them yet. While we're doing the Rivnuts, we're going to paint them, and then they have time to dry before we shove the bolt through. So now we're just going to shove the bolt through as a placeholder. All right, look at that. Did it right the first try. That's because we designed it. All right, I'm going under to mark the additional holes as I go get my creeper that rolled away. Thank you. This is a little bit tighter. This is actually a 2-wheel drive van. So this is one of our new display vans that we're gonna build out. Because it's a display van, we didn't put we didn't get a 4-wheel drive. They're hard to get right now. So since it's not really gonna get used, you'll have to pretend it's 4-wheel drive. All right, can you guys see that? We'll back it up a little bit. All right. So now you can see under here, and you can see where the bracket is. And again, you see how this bracket's a little bit mobile still because you just have these bolts holding it in place. Loosely, you're gonna wanna put some positive pressure on this so it's flat against this upper section here. And then I like to, so I don't get it in the wrong spot, I like to draw around the entirety of the circle there. This material is a little bit spongy, so it's a little bit hard to work with, but you get the idea. So now's the part where, before we move on, we're gonna paint these holes. And one of the things I like to do is grab a piece of cardboard for the outside. First, let's paint the inside. That's easy. So this is again that, and you can use any paint. This is what I use, Rust-Oleum Rust Remover. It's a little bit of a rust inhibitor. So you want to hit both sides of this because you just want to make sure you get all of that bare metal. Sure. Okay. So what I do is I just grab a scrap piece of cardboard, and you can hold this up here so you don't get any on your paint of your vehicle while you do this. And that's all going to be covered, so you really don't have to worry about being Picasso with that because it's all going to be covered by the bracket anyway. So now we're ready to go drill. Okay. So we still have the 1/4 inch drill bit in this drill from doing these pinch welds. I'm going to use that as a pilot drill bit for this, so you can just leave it in for the initial drilling. And unlike my stupidity, you should be wearing safety goggles. Thank you. Oh, look at this. My esteemed colleague, who also runs health and safety for us and makes sure we're OSHA compliant, brought me safety goggles. Because I'm the only moron that's not on the workers' comp. And you don't want to put a ton of pressure on this as you drill it, because you don't want that drill to suck through and go through anything else. So you just light pressure, and when you get close to the end, which you can usually tell by the sound changing or the resistance changing, you want to lighten up. Now we're going to switch to the, all right, now we're switching to the drill bit that is one size below 3/8, also known as 23/64. But you knew that. You could do that in your head, right? This is easier on 4-wheel drive vans. So now if you get any burrs on here, if you're unwise like me, you can work them off with your fingers, but you might cut yourself. So just get like a little file or a flathead screwdriver, just knock those off so that you can make sure your Rivnuts seat flat. So now we're gonna paint this, again with our favorite little rattle can. Don't be shy, get on in there. let that dry for a little bit, and then we'll put the Rivnut in. Now dry, and by dry I mean I really gave it like 30 seconds, and you should give it longer. So I'm gonna put the Rivnuts in now. We've got the 1/4 inch bit on this, and I'm just gonna crimp, tighten. Crimp, tighten. To make it easier, if you lightly hold the the handles together, it screws in and out easier. Now I'm going to load another Rivnut. All right, this time let's count how many licks it takes to get the center of a Tootsie Pop. All right, we're in and we're tight, so 1, 2, 3, let's go 4. All right, we're at 4. That feels pretty good. Now I'm going to check to make sure they don't spin. If they spin, you got to tighten them more. So you don't want to under tighten them. We're just going to put this bolt in. That's a good sign. It's not spinning yet. Let's just make sure we can snug them up. All right, that's snugging without spinning. That's a good sign. And you can repeat the process with the other side. The reason we ran that bolt in there is if you don't have your Rivnuts tight enough and you put the bolt in, when you go to tighten the bolt, the whole assembly will spin. It's not what you want. So you want to figure that out now before you go further. So I don't know, was that about a minute to put these two in, maybe a little bit longer, so you can understand that while not difficult, once you get a few down the passenger side and a few down the driver's side, it can be a little time consuming. At this point, we are ready to install the bracket on the pinch weld and then put in the bolts on top for the bracket, and basically bracket A will be installed. So if we're going through the pinch weld, we're not putting a washer on this. This is going to go straight in this way. So we're going to set this up here. And that goes straight through like that. And I get my other one. Wait, is this the same size that goes in the...
They are, yeah. Made it as easy as possible.
Okay. All right, so that goes through, and then you need the backing plate. And again, all this stuff will be powder coated. I should have said at the beginning, this is purely because all the powder coated ones go to customers. So we have the raw ones here. So if you move these bolts back a little bit, you slide this backing plate in from the back. All right, let me show you that. See how that looks? So putting these bolts to the pinch weld, I fed the bolt through. You can see you've got this flat washer that goes the length all the way down, and you don't need a nut on this. You don't need a washer. We're gonna go straight with a nut there. We are gonna put a washer and a bolt into the Rivnuts there. So yeah, let's get this together. So I'm gonna put this in loosely up here. And again, we've got one of the bolts with a washer on it. And this is why you leave everything loose, because sometimes it takes a little bit of effort or a little bit of moving things around to get everything to where it's not cross-threaded and it's installed. So now I've got everything loose. That is a good place to start. Get everything in before you start tightening anything down. Now on the positive, old Johnny didn't screw it up. We got the Rivnuts in the right spot, so that's a good start. Now we're gonna tighten the pinch welds. Look at this, I've got a third hand helping me now. Fourth hand. This is mind-blowing. And this is a situation where it's just a matter of tightening it down now. So you hold the back side, tighten that front. And if you do make any mistakes while you're installing this, you're always welcome to reach out to customer support. You know, you can get some spares. if you screw stuff up, we do have the bag of extras, but we want to make sure this goes smoothly for you. So feel free, if you do have any questions along the way, to reach out to customer support. We usually can answer the calls during business hours. If it's on the weekend, we won't return calls until the first work day after, but our email support is also a pretty quick turnaround, so whatever works best for you. And as far as torque specs, we don't really have a torque spec on these. They do have nylocks on them, so snug, not super tight. These are stainless bolts. Stainless is a fairly soft metal, and so you don't want to over torque these. Probably like 20-ish pounds is about right. Same thing with the Rivnuts. Rivnuts are not super robust, so you don't want to go too tight on them. You just want to snug them in. And again, these all these bolts are really doing is holding the bracket on force on these bolts. So there you have it. That's pretty simple. You've got the two Rivnuts with the bolts with washers coming around to the front. You've basically got your A bracket installed. You've got your two pinch weld bolts, and then this is hanging down. And what attaches to this are one of two things. There are two what we call B brackets. This bracket that looks like it's got a bit of a chunk taken out of it is for the front step, because that part of the side step is shaped slightly differently. And this back bracket is for the rest of the steps when you get to the main body of the step. And that'll make more sense as we get further along. These brackets, the way they mount, there's a right and a left. And the way you can tell is the direction of the vehicle. It's like your hair. It's like if you have long, beautiful flowing Fabio hair and you stick your head out the window and your hair's flowing this way. Well, it's the same with this. So this bracket is going to flow towards the back, which means as you put this on, it's going to be shaped like that. Does that make sense? Now for the front one, for the first A bracket you install, it's going to be this one with the notch out of it. And to install this, the B bracket, to the A bracket is super easy. You've got the B bracket kit here. When you're installing this, snug it down, but don't really crank on it, because we still want some adjustability in the entire assembly before we snug everything down. Washer on both sides of these. We like to mount this on the leading edge of the bracket. So you're going to put this on, and then you've got another one here. Again, bolt and washer. Of course. You know what? I'm going to put the washer and the nut on the back side instead of continuing to fumble with this. And again, these are nylocks, so you don't need to crank down on them too hard. And we're just snugging stuff up for now. 9/16 open-ended wrench, and I have a 7/32 Allen driver. Lightly snugged there. Lightly snug there. She's still got a little bit, that's a little bit too tight. But once you get some leverage of the actual foot step, or side step I should say, on here, then you've got a little bit more of an ability to move these around. So that is pretty much a final assembly. And so we're basically going to rinse and repeat over the whole side of the van. Now you're going to be changing, as you move back, this will change to a completely encased bracket, but the installation of the A bracket portion is really the same. So now we're going to measure as we go back. It's this first one was 15 inches from the seam, from this body seam. We're going to go 23 inches center to center. So what I mean by center is this center fin on the A bracket. So the next A bracket would be 23 inches from this fin to this fin. And you just mark that and repeat the installation process for this. Through the magic of television, we're going to have a completely installed set of side steps for you to look at. The van color may change. So here they are installed. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit and disregard the fact the color of the van has changed. But once you get those side brackets installed, again, it's all the same. We'll take you underneath. It's really all the same as it was on that first bracket. You can see here they are powder coated. So we're just, and these brackets, this is an older design bracket, so disregard that. The new bracket's wider. But you can see we're putting them at 23 inches apart as we go down. And actually, and it's not 23 inches. If you're at 22, it doesn't matter. In fact, because more weight is going to be on the earlier part of the step, this spacing between these two is a little bit tighter, but that's a general rule of thumb. But you see how they all install, it's pretty seamless. And then to actually put the step onto the bracket, you can see that you just simply set the bracket on, and then you drop the 3/8 bolts through with washers and tighten them. And then you can kind of adjust this gap here by adjusting the bolts underneath and moving this bracket up and down, etc. The other aspect that we want to talk about is the tread plate. This is a pretty cool part of the product. This one's been installed, so disregard that bolt mark. Cool thing about this is it provides a lot of grip when you're getting in and out of the van. It's got this kind of sharper edge, not sharp enough to cut you, but sharp edge is going to grab your foot as you get out of the van and makes getting in and out really easy. And then it's got this boot cleaner down here for if you're in muddy or snowy or whatever terrain and you want to wipe your boots off. You can adjust where this is, but typically you want it near the opening of the slider door, so you can actually see how those overlap with those holes. So you can put it right there and install the entire step with the tread plate through it. Those would be the bolts on that side, and then you need additional bolts on this side, etc. Really, for the tread plate, you only need a bolt, a couple of bolts to hold it in place. It's just kind of sitting on there. You can choose to use this or not use this. It's really up to you. But that is how you do the passenger side side step. The driver's side is really the same as the passenger side. We're going to use the measurements are roughly the same. Again, you've got that body seam. We're going to go the 15 inches from the body seam, and then in this one we spaced them out about every 30, but realistically the majority of your weight is going to be on this part of the step, so you can cheat that back into that 23-inch mark that you used on the other side. So 15 and then 23 again, and then you just put this one as far back as you can go to space out the load. And 3 is plenty for this side because again it's a slightly shorter step and you're not really getting any weight on that outside of maybe a Rotopax or something, but certainly not a big old 210-pound person like myself. So that is how you install the side steps. Again, if you have any questions with the side steps or any issues, you can reach out to customer service. It is support at Owl Vans or 866 Owl Vans, and they'll get you taken care of. Look at how beautiful they look. Blend seamlessly right in there. I hope you're happy with your product. Again, we have a bunch of video tutorials on our YouTube page, and everything from how to install more of our products to just general van and adventure van gear and how to use it. Like and subscribe if you want to see this content. Thanks so much.